Welcome back. In this video we are going to start our scanning phase, and in the previous videos we have covered the information gathering, which was the first part of the penetration testing, and now we'll proceed with the second stage of scanning our target and trying to get even more information about it. Now, the difference between information gathering and scanning is done on a much deeper level, and also while in the first stage of penetration testing we gather information like phone numbers, IP address and emails, but in the scanning phase we mainly focus on the technology side. We want to find out as much as we can about our target's technical aspects. We are going to talk about in just seconds as to what exactly are we looking for and what our goals are in this stage. But first, you might be wondering, what are we going to scan? Since remember that scan is something that we are not allowed to do on any target we want. But don't worry, for this stage or the upcoming stages, from now on we'll be using vulnerable virtual machines. There are a lot of virtual machines that you can buy, but for this course we'll be using the free ones. So all of us can download them and install them, and we can try to hack them. And keep in mind that this penetration testing process will exactly look like a real-world hacking or penetration testing. The only difference is we know that our missions are vulnerable, but in the real world you wouldn't essentially know that before testing them. However, just knowing only they are vulnerable doesn't really help us, as we need to figure out how they are vulnerable and use this to our advantage in the scanning phase, and this scanning phase will help us in this process. So in this part we'll be using our Kali Linux machine to scan these virtual vulnerable machines, and we will scan them. What I really mean by scanning is we are going to directly exchange packets with the machines. Once these targets send packets to us, hopefully it will discover something about our target mission that can be useful to us. So what we'll be sending to the targets? We will be sending this TCP and UDP packets, and we know that TCP and UDP are protocols that are used for sending bits of data, also known as packets, or in generally for this part we will just call them the communication protocols that will help us in the scan phase. Okay, so what are our goals? What exactly are we looking for this part? So in this part we are looking for open ports. I don't mean like USB ports or any physical ports. What I really mean is we are looking for virtual open ports. These protocols meaning the TCP and UDP. These port numbers host softwares and services, and they help us to communicate with other machines over the internet. For example, let's say that you are watching this video on a website, and in this website you are using the port 80. Why port 80? Because, well, port 80 is used for a website, and we know that port 80 is associated with HTTP. So this port 80 or even port 443, they are used to host websites. Port 80 is used for HTTP, and port 443 is used HTTPS, which is the secure version of HTTP. We have a lot of port numbers, like port number 21, which uses the FTP, and this protocol is used for transferring files. We also have port number 22, and most of the time the SSH, which is the secure shell, which is used to log in for remote locations, is used by this port number. Also DNS is used by port number 53, and SMTP, which is used port number 52. So there are a lot of port numbers out there. In fact, there are 65,500 certifiers that a machine use for both TCP and UDP. And if there is just one open port with one vulnerable software running on that open port, we know that machine is vulnerable. And so the goal for now in the scan section is to only scan for the open ports, and we want to discover what software it's using on these open ports, and we want to go as deep as scanning what version that software is using on these open ports. So, are you ready? We are going to be covering a lot on this section. And in this section, we'll be covering one of the most important tools that every hacker must use and master, and that tool is called Nmap. And so let's dive in to scanning and see you in the next video.